a 15 marker question, the unseen question in the new spec for CIE Computer Science. Now, the problem for this example question is that we have a two-dimensional array of 100 elements of items. It's called items. Each item has its ID and its price, and you can see it's stored sequentially in a list, and it just gives you some of a part of that array. And then, so the program needed takes an item ID, so that's input by the user, and a quantity. And obviously if the ID is in there, then it's going to use that quantity to times that with the price of that item that it finds. And if its ID isn't found as you go through the list, then it will output a message such as, sorry, not found or not in the list. Okay, and obviously it also needs to total the number of individual items bought. So if I was to type in ID 11.1, for example, this item here, I might say I want 10. So of course then I've got to do 10 times this to work out the price, or the total cost to the user, but also I've got to add 10 to the number of items. So I'll need a variable, something along the lines of number of items. And I'll keep taking those IDs until I get a change. So I might be like, do you want to enter another one? Yes or no? And if I say yes, I go again. I take the ID from them, I search for it in the list, and if I find it, I ask for the quantity, and then I times the quantity by the price, add that to the total cost, add the quantity to the number of items, and repeat until they say no, and then we come out of the loop, and then we can print out those variables that we have remaining. So let's look at a coded example in Python. So we're going to create the variables first, so let's debug and step through so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to set total to 0, so that's ready to add to the total cost, which will print at the end, as you can see on line 28. I've got something called command equals yes. Now that is just my loop control in my while loop. So if they answer the question with yes, do you want to enter again? Then I'll keep going. If they say anything else, then I'll come out of the loop. So I'll set that to yes, just so I can go into the loop one time first. Found is set to false, and I'll set that to true when I do find the item, because if I don't find the item, I can print out the suitable message, as you might be able to see on line 20. I set number of items to 0, of course, just getting that set up, and I'm going to pre-populate the list, as in the exam, most likely it will say that the data is already stored in the 2D array. So I've got a list of lists. So this group here, 2.4 is the ID, 12.99 is the price of that item. This is both of these numbers are stored at position 0, position 1, position 2. And if I wanted just to print out the price of 12.99, of course I'd access that with double square brackets, and I would say 0, 1. If I wanted to print out 1.1, I would do print in brackets, I would do 2, 0. So that's 2, 0. So let's keep going through. So we step over this, let's go over this. So that gets set up, and you'll see that appear in the variables window here. So we've got these variables set up ready, the ones we need. And let's step into this. So is command equal to command? Well, it should be, yep, yes equals yes. It's true, so we go in, we ask for the ID. So I'll type in 1 to find, let's go for 1.23, 1.23. That gets stored in ID. And we turn it into a float just to make sure the data types match. So this loop is going to go through for each item in the list. So a for loop makes sense. So we go through every item. So I've used the length of the list. So if that list is 3 long or 3,000 long, it will go through every one. So that's going to do 3 because I've got 3 in the list there. So it's going to go, I is going to be set to 0 initially. And then I will become 1, 2, and so on. So I want to find, initially, does items at I0. So let's have a look. So I always want to look to the first position in the sublist at 0. So I'm going to first look for 0, 0, which is 2.4. So does 2.4 equals 1.23? That's the item code. No. So we go through again. I is now 1. So I'm going to now go to the next sublist at position 1 and look at its 0 position as in the item code. So does 1.23 match 1.23? Yes, true. So I set a little flag variable, found, to true. I will then ask for the quantity as per the question. So I'll type in 5. Turn that to an integer just to make sure, so I can do some maths with it. Next line, now work out the total. So I do that quantity, which I've just asked for, 5, times it by items at, now I want the price. Now the price is always in the 1 position of the sublist, and I hasn't changed, so I'm basically looking at I1 or 1, which is 45.99, so that's the total. So I do the maths. I could round it, of course, and I store that in total, or I add it to total. And we go again. At this point, I can make it a bit more efficient. I don't need to keep going through the list once I found it once, probably. So a bit of inefficiency here, but it doesn't really matter. But I could make a change. If found equals false, no, it doesn't, because I changed it to true, so that's not true. So I'm not going to print out the error message because I found it. So I go to the else part. Now this is where I'm going to say, like, do you want to continue? Yes or no? So you'll see that prompt at the bottom. So I will type in yes, and I'll step again. And I put it to lowercase just so it's a match, because if somebody typed in a capital for either of the characters, it wouldn't match. I set found back to false, ready to go again, and we just repeat exactly what I've just did before. We're in the while loop because it's true. I asked for the ID, so let's just quickly go through this, and I'll try and find the first one this time, so 2.4, and then step. Again, we're going to go through the loop. We're going to go at the start and go through each item in the list, which still is 3. I is set to 0, and we're going to look for 0, 0, which is 2.4. So we should have a match. 2.4 equals 2.4. True. Found is true. Enter the quantity. So I'll enter 3. Keep going. Total now is equals 3 times that item's price. Works exactly the same way. I is the same number, and we want to point to the sublist 1 position, so it's going to be 1, 1. So we're going to times it by that price to get, times it by 3, do the maths, store it, and add it to the total. So up here you can see that it's accumulating the total, so it's added it to what was there from previously, right? It's not replacing it, it's adding on to it. Step again, number of items plus 3, so you'll see number of items in the variable window is now gone to 8, and it's going to keep going through. So I'll just keep going through this until it gets to the end of the list. Again, it would make sense not to have to go through other items to make it more efficient. Now, found was true, so this isn't going to flag that it's not found. Now this time I'm going to test, I'm going to say no, or anything would work. And to put that to lowercase, set found back to false, back to the while loop. Command should now be no, so it should be false. It comes out of the while loop, and I'm done. So I'm just going to print the total cost, and I could print number of items or anything else at this point, and I'm done. Just quickly go back to the question, and I have covered what I need to do in this problem statement. So if I do that in the exam, and I write this out, and I put some comments here like this, then I should probably get 15 marks.